Hello everyone, my name is Nilanjan Chatterjee and today we are going to discuss the Puranas. Okay, in the previous video we talked about the Itihasas. In this video we'll be talking about the Puranas. While talking about Itihasas, I have already mentioned that Itihasa is a particular literary form that was once rediscovered by Indian scholars as something very close to history. Okay, although Itihasa is often translated as epic, there are some historical values embedded in Itihasa in literary terms. Okay, before we get into our main discussion, let me tell you one thing. We, the Universal Group of Institutions, have started our admission program. If you are interested in joining our college, please visit our website. We have BA, BSc and BCom courses along with integrated UPSC and IAS coaching. Apart from that, we have Universal PU College along with CSAT and CUET training programs. Okay, so feel free to join our college, and please remember one thing: if you use the referral code of NIL009, I'm repeating, if you use our referral code of NIL009, you'll get some attractive discounts. Now today we'll be talking about the Puranas. Itihasas and Puranas are not exactly the same. They have certain differences, but in this video we'll be trying to understand the points of differences between Itihasa Purana traditions. Itihasa and Purana traditions. So the Puranas, which is the encyclopedic knowledge. There are different facets of the Puranas. First, let's talk about rituals. Okay, Puranas are basically stories with detailed instructions for ceremonies and vratas. This is a very important aspect of Purana. Vratas, okay, and life cycle rituals for different varnas. So in later Vedic period, when varna system got crystallized, we see development of certain rituals along with sacrifices or yajnas. Puranas kind of codify those rituals in the form of certain literary narratives. In Puranas, you are basically telling a story. You are basically narrating a story. But actually, uh, there are embedded connotations in Puranas where you get to know about certain vratas, okay, certain vows. Okay, it is not directly asking you to maintain vratas or vows. It is basically suggesting you about these vratas and vows. So the surface is literature, but there are some underpinnings, some ritualistic underpinnings of the Puranas. And the second point is genealogies. And that is the reason Puranas are often associated with history. Okay, what is known as history in modern times. Okay, so what is genealogies? Puranas, okay, gives extensive vamshas, records of vamshas. Vamshas are basically lineage. Okay, lineage of three things. Okay, one is God. It gives vamshas of gods, then sages and royal dynasties. So it talks about gods, which is the ultimate spiritual authority, the sages, which are who are trying to attain some spiritual goals, and the royal dynasties, which possess political prestige, occupies political power. So these are the three entities that the Puranas deal with. Okay, the Puranas try to record the lineages of these three entities. Okay, next is sectarian theology. Okay, promotion of specific deities and philosophical systems through mythological narratives. Okay, uh, next is medicine and ethics, inclusion of Ayurvedic knowledge and moral codes for societal conduct. The Puranas also tries to codify Ayurvedic knowledge and medical knowledge, okay, through the form of literature. Next is cosmology, descriptions of universe, creation, cosmic rules and cosmic cycles, and sacred geography, including Mount Meru and Jambudvipa. So it gives you a sense of cosmos, okay, that is the universe, okay, and Earth, and also a rough idea of the cartography of India, okay. So what is there in the south? It gives you an idea, okay. What is there in the north? It gives you a rough idea, okay. So in the south we have Jambu Dvipa. In north we have Meru Mount, the Mount Meru, okay, Meru Parvat, like that. Now we have come to the classification of the Puranas, okay. There are 18 major texts, including Vishnu Purana, Bhagavata Purana, Matsya Purana, Kurma Purana, Varaha Purana, Skanda Purana, Markandeya Purana, Vayu Purana, Agni Purana, Shiva Purana, Padma Purana, and Brahmanda Puranas. Okay, and composition of Puranas began in early Gupta period, that is in 3rd century CE, and continued till 13th 14th centuries. So as we can see, uh, the Itihasas were composed probably much earlier than the Puranas. The Puranas are basically derivative or derived from multiple indigenous scriptural traditions. Okay, then we come to the Upapuranas, 18 secondary texts, that is called Upapuranas, including Kalika, Saura, Naradiya, and Brihan Puranas. Okay, less standardized. These Upapuranas are less standardized, but equally important for regional traditions and sectarian developments. Okay, so the deities that we see in the early Vedic or later Vedic period, they get more complicated during this Puranic phase. Okay, we see rise of sectarianism. Okay, rise of sectarian adaptation, rise of sectarian interpretations of certain deities. So that is how scriptures, which apparently seemed like almost monolithic, after the intervention of Puranic knowledge, it turned out to be very complicated and diverse. Okay, now we have come to the third point, that is the classification of the Puranas. Pancha Lakshana model. Okay, each Purana, this is very important, each Purana traditionally includes 5 elements. Okay, one is Sarga, that is the creation of this universe. Pratisarga, recreation after dissolution. Manvantara, okay, cosmic time epochs. Vamsha, that is genealogies, one of the crucial facet of uh, the Puranas I've already mentioned. And Vamshanucharita, that is dynastic histories. So it starts with the creation of universe in a very cosmological as well as spiritual sense, and then it turns to a historical understanding of Vamshas and dynasties. Okay, from cosmology to history, a wide range of subjects are covered in the Puranas. Okay, and we see different interpretations of the Puranas. We see transformation of the Puranas from time to time. So, which makes Puranas a much more complicated domain of knowledge. Okay, next slide. From oral to written traditions. Okay, the bardic origins of the Puranas. Puranas, that Sutas, Magadhas, and Bandins were specialized bards, okay, genealogists and chroniclers who preserved oral traditions through performances at courts and rituals. So these bards used to spread the Puranic knowledge orally, okay, in the form of singing or chanting. That is how the Puranic knowledge, the Puranic stories got disseminated, spread. Okay. Next is performance context. I've already mentioned Vedic yajnas, temples, and village gatherings served as spaces where wandering storytellers disseminated epics and Puranic lore through dramatic narration. So, on one hand, they would talk about itihasas, on the other hand, they would talk about Puranic like they would narrate Puranic stories in a very attractive fashion. Okay, a dramatic narration, uh, as I've mentioned. Next is Brahminical redaction. Okay, oral narratives gradually came under Brahminical control. So the Puranic narratives, as I already told you, Puranas got complicated and complicated over the course of time. Okay, but after a point of time, Brahmanism also absorbed different variations or different facets of Puranas. Okay, and it came under Brahminical control, being standardized in Sanskrit. Okay, and aligned with orthodox cosmological and dharmic frameworks. Orthodox cosmological and dharmic frameworks that suit Brahmanism. Okay, so Brahmanism also absorbed Puranic, narratives, Puranic stories, okay, Puranic notions of cosmology, and it shaped, it appropriated uh, within itself. Okay, now let's come to the next point, that is manuscript traditions. Okay, by the early medieval period, that is from 6th to 12th century, texts were preserved in written form on palm leaf and birch bark manuscripts. Okay, though with regional variations and interpolations. Okay, and the next is Vedic yajnas. Elaborate sacrificial rituals where suttas recited genealogies and heroic narratives to honor royal lineages, combining religious ceremony with political legitimation. Okay, we have had a separate discussion on the relation between the Kshatriyas and the Brahmins in terms of yajnas and all, and we are not going into detail, but what we can say, what we can understand, that in those yajnas, in those sacrificial rituals, these Puranas played an important role. Why? Because on one hand, it talks about spiritualism, it talks about cosmology. On the other hand, it talks about dynastic lineages and history. So it can combine the interest of the Kshatriya ruler in a yajna and also the interest of Brahmins in terms of cosmic understandings, in terms of spiritualism. Okay, so that is one way of propagating, Puranic knowledge. We have already mentioned about the manuscript traditions of early medieval period, and the Vedic yajnas is another one. Now, another performance that is important is temple gatherings. Temple became cultural centers from Gupta period onwards, because we see a revolution in temple in the construction of temples during Gupta period, hosting Purana recitation during festivals. This is very important. From Gupta period onwards, we see hosting Purana recitations during festivals and nightly congregations, okay, that is called kathas, that made sacred narratives accessible to common people. So these kathas actually popularized the Puranic knowledge. It popularized the Puranic narratives. Okay, and the kathas used to be chanted in the night time. Okay, and it was targeted. It targeted the common people. Okay, next is pilgrimage sites, tirthas, okay, which are the pilgrimage sites, sacred sites, served as hubs where wandering storytellers disseminated epics and Puranic lore, thereby popularizing sacred geographies and pilgrimage circuits throughout India. So, the sacred geography which are already mentioned in the Puranas are gradually getting popularization, okay, and they are becoming uh, pilgrimage sites. Okay, next is indigenous historiography. As Romila Thapar has argued, we can understand the Puranas and the Itihasas in multiple terms. Okay, one is embedded history. Okay, from the Puranas, historical understanding we can see is intertwined with ethics and cosmology. So, if you want to know about history from the Puranas, you have to excavate and extract the historicity, okay, the embedded historical information from the Puranas. That is one methodology of history. Okay, next is another important point is cyclical time, the Yuga framework replacing linear chronology. Okay, one comes after another. That is the linearity of chronology. But in Puranic terms, we see cyclical time. Okay, birth and rebirth. Okay, death and rebirth. Then genealogical memory, Vamsha as political legitimation. Okay, so once you have a categorization called Vamsa, okay, then you kind of expect that your Vamsha, since it is already categorized, it gets some kind of political legitimation along with the spiritual connotations that are attached, the spiritual associations which are attached to your lineage or to your Vamsha. Okay, Romila Thapar defines Itihasa-Purana literature as embedded history, a mode of historical understanding where past events are intertwined with ethical concerns, mystic cosmology, and social memory. This is also very important, Shruti. Unlike externalized history, so embedded history is contradicted by externalized history, which names events, dates. Okay, externalized history names events and dates. Embedded history, on the other hand, requires interpretive engagement to extract meaning from narrative layers. You are given narratives, you are given stories from which you have to extract the historical essence. That is the beauty of Itihasa-Purana tradition. It won't give you exact historical details, information, but it will give you narratives from which you have to gather, from which you have to collect, okay, the essence. Uh, the Yuga framework of time, okay, uh, the cyclical time. Satya, which is mentioned in the Itihasa-Purana tradition, golden edge of truth and perfect dharma, okay. Then Treta Yuga, the era of Ramayana, 3/4 of Dharma. Dwapara, that is the age of Mahabharata, half Dharma, and finally Kali Yuga, the current age of conflict and quarter Dharma. So we see different ranges and scales of Dharma in accordance with different yugas. Okay. On one hand, you have the golden age, that is Satya Yuga. Then you have the era of Ramayana, that is Treta Yuga. Then you have the age of Mahabharata, that is Dwapara Yuga, where you come to half Dharma and almost no Dharma to quarter Dharma, that is the current age of conflict, the Kali Yuga. The cosmology substitutes in Purana, the cosmology substitutes historical linearity with moral arc, okay, where time decays and renews based on human action and divine intervention. Okay, the narratives of Ramayana and Mahabharata are temporarily situated within its cosmic framework, giving them both mythic and historical dimension. Okay, modern scholarly perspectives. This is also very important. D.D. Kosambi, pioneer of scientific historiography, who emphasized reading the Puranas through the lens of material culture. Okay, what was the material life of the people of Puranas? How the material conditions shaped the aspects, the concepts of divinity and cosmology in the Puranic terms. Okay, also the concept of philosophy, the concept of ethics, okay, in Puranic texts. He argued that myth was a tool of the elite to naturalize class domination, and that interpolations reflect shifts in agrarian class structures. Okay, we see certain class dynamics in the Puranas which are often overlooked by thinkers, which was first, pointed out by D.D. Kosambi. Okay, so the next one is R.S. Sharma, focused on social stratification and caste legitimation. He examined how the Puranas sanctioned Varna Dharma, ritual hierarchy, and Brahminical supremacy through their narratives and prescriptions. Okay, so also he studies that how Brahmanism later on appropriated local regional Puranic norms and regional Puranic, knowledges. Okay, so the next is Romila Thapar, moved beyond economic determinism to engage with textual multiplicity. Romila Thapar also engaged with uh, ritual performativity and narrative ideology. Okay, Romila Thapar also talked about the literary aspects of the Puranic tales. Her conception of embedded history recognizes the historical value within mythological frameworks. Okay, so on one hand we have materialist viewpoints of D.D. Kosambi and R.S. Sharma. Okay, how material conditions shaped the notions of ideology, notions like ideology, ethics, etc. It how R.S. Sharma is showing how class equations we can find in Puranic tales, also how castes were reinterpreted and revitalized in the Puranas. These social equations we can find from their understandings, from their writings. On the other hand, Romila Thapar is concentrating largely on the literary aspect and how we see dynastic histories, we see social history from we can uh, extract social history from the Itihasa-Purana tradition, that is Romila Thapar is showing us. Okay, next is the political functions of this tradition. Dynastic legitimation. First is Puranic genealogies linked rulers to solar, that is Surya Vamsha, or lunar dynasties, the Chandra Vamsha. Sanctifying political authority through divine lineages. Okay, kings like Guptas claimed descent from Rama. Okay, while Cholas invoked Shiva and Skanda to establish divine mandate. So sometimes you will see Rama is treated as a god. Sometimes he will see Rama is treated as a mythical character, or just a fictitious character. So dharmic governance, the tradition provided models of righteous kingship through figures like Rama and Yudhishthira, establishing Raja Dharma, that is the duty or duties of kings, that balanced power with moral responsibility and religious patronage. So questions like Raja Dharma is also discussed. This is a very important point. Questions of Raja Dharma, questions like Raja Dharma, or uh, ideas like Raja Dharma uh, are also discussed in Itihasa-Purana texts. Territorial integration by mapping sacred geography through tirtha networks and divine stories tied to specific locations, traditions helped create a unified cultural space across diverse regions of the subcontinent. Next is the religious and cultural functions. Three major sectarian traditions we can see developed, okay, from the Puranic tradition. One is Vaishnava, the other one is Shaiva, and the third one is Shakta. Okay, Vaishnava, Shaiva, and Shakta Puranas establish distinct theological frameworks. Okay, that is the further development of Puranic texts. Okay, 18 Mahapuranas, canonical texts that codified rituals, iconography, and festivals, norms. Okay, and 7,000 plus temple inscriptions. The Puranas served as doctrinal platforms for sectarian consolidation, codifying temple rituals, iconography, festivals, and pilgrimage circuits. Their adaptability allowed them to interface with local deities, okay, integrating folk traditions into pan-Indian frameworks while preserving regional distinctiveness. Okay, vernacularization and regional adaptations of Puranas. The reach of Itihasa-Purana texts expanded dramatically with their translation and adaptation into regional languages. This is also a very important point. Works like Tulsidas's Ramacharita-manas, which is written in Awadhi, and Krittivasi Ramayana, which is written in Bangla, and Puthana's Bhagavatam, which is written in Telugu, and Kamba Ramayanam, that is written in Tamil, preserved the ethical core while localizing narratives for regional audiences. So, Puranic narratives got localized and regionalized through the course of time. Okay, Bhakti movement and democratization of the Puranic, knowledge. Devotional expression, particularly found in Bhakti movement, uh, the Bhakti saints across regions drew extensively from Itihasa-Purana imagery, transforming abstract theological concepts into emotional or personal relationships with the deities through poetry and songs. That is how also in the early medieval and medieval period Puranic traditions got popularized, okay, through Bhakti movement. Social inclusivity, the tradition transcended, the Puranic tradition transcended its Brahminical origins as Bhakti movements made sacred narratives accessible to all castes, women, and non literate populations through vernacular compositions and public performances. Okay, emotional connection. Figures like Mirabai celebrated Krishna not only as cosmic avatar from the Bhagavata Purana, but also as the intimate divine beloved. Okay, creating a more personal approach to spirituality based on love rather than ritual. Okay, so Purana is coming into the inner domain. Okay, the inner domain of private or the private life of human beings. Okay, comparative traditions, Buddhist chronicles. With the Buddhist chronicles, first point, the Dipavamsa and Mahavamsa chronicles of Sri Lanka. These are the important Buddhist chronicles, adopted Puranic formats with cosmic genealogies and dynastic histories. The Dipavamsa and Mahavamsa, two very important Buddhist texts. Then the Jaina Charitas, texts like Trishashti, Shalaka, Purusha Charita, blended biography, moral instruction, and historical memory in a Puranic style. Okay. Next is regional chronicles. Kalhana's famous Kalhana's Raj Tarangini combined mythic genealogies with rational analysis in documenting Kashmir's history. Okay. Colonial interactions, British Orientalists like William Jones, F.E. Pargeter, attempted to correlate Puranic dynasties with archaeological evidence. They tried to, juxtapose Puranic knowledge with modern scientific knowledge during the colonial period. Okay, and during a relevance of the Itihasa Purana tradition, the contemporary media, we have seen television adaptations of Ramayana and Mahabharata have reached millions, demonstrating traditions continued cultural significance and resonance in modern India. Academic discourse, also very important point, scholarly engagement with the texts, the Itihasa Purana texts, living traditions, performances like Ram Leela, Kathakali, and regional storytelling traditions keep the narratives alive as participatory cultural experiences rather than mere texts. Okay, so that is it for today. Please let me know your opinion in the comment section. Next day we'll come up with some new videos. Stay tuned and subscribe our channel. Thank you very much.